Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson, and this week, really excited for this episode because it's all about food, and your boy loves food. Not sure if you know that about me. Not sure if you can tell by the sound of my voice. I'm a little husky. I'm a little husky fella. Here's the thing though, like, I don't know. I've never seen someone who's like, I love food, but then like all they eat is like salad and like baked salmon and stuff. Like, no. Like, anyone who says they love food has the diet of just a back alley raccoon, just diving through the dumpsters, just eating everything, right? Here's the thing. Like, just to prove how just strange my palate is. Like, I think Applebee's is great, and there are a lot of people who disagree with that, and that's fine. They can be wrong, but like, if I like good flavors, good food, look, and I'll eat a salad every now and then, but it's got to have quite a bit of dressing on it because that's what gives salad its flavor, not the lettuce. But looking at 4 stories this week related to food from history. We are looking at the Great Tomato Trial, the Great Peanut Butter Panic. I don't know why they're both great. It's just how they got called in history. The Swiss Cheese Pervert, and our first story after the music of Tarrare. God, I wish I could roll my R's, but I can't. Like, I can go like, but that's not me rolling my R's. That's just me gurgling spit in the back of my mouth. There you go. That's a nice visual image for you there. So like, I can do it. So our first story today, I'll do it right now. Our first story today is of Tarrare. Anyway, Tarrare. Oh, that was almost it. I still gurgled. Anyway, this guy was born near Lyon, France in 1772, and dude had a voracious appetite, right? Like, we talk about like Joey Chestnut, Matt Stoney, Kobayashi, like some of these famous food challenge people, winning hot dog competitions and doing all kinds of crazy food challenges. Like, this dude, Tarrare was way more insane. All right. By the time he was a teenager, all right, this guy could eat his body weight in steak. And that's not really an exaggeration. Dude could eat if he was 80 pounds, he could almost eat that much weight in steak. It's insane. His family was actually forced to kick him out of the house because they could not afford to keep feeding him. So he moved to Paris and basically became a warm-up act for a traveling salesman, right? And so this was at a time where people didn't really go door to door, but they would camp out in the city square, get a big crowd to gather around, and there would be some entertainment to try to get their attention, and then they'd come out. Usually it was like all of this, it was the snake oil salesman. Like, that's where this kind of originated from. And so Tarrare was, I'm going to keep doing it because now it's just fun for me. And he was just like the warm-up act for someone like this. And so as part of his act, Tarrare would eat like corks, stones, entire baskets of apples, and even live animals without any problem whatsoever. His favorite food was actually snake. And I don't know if he like ate live snakes or if he cooked them, but either way, he loved eating snakes. And despite his immense diet, the dude only weighed around 100 pounds. So like, he clearly had something wrong with his body where his metabolism was just sky high all of the time, because he would just constantly eat, but he never gained any weight. And like, if he went long enough without eating, he would actually be able to wrap his excess stomach skin around his waist. And the reason that he had that was because he would have to eat so much, his stomach would expand and, his skin would stretch out. And then if he went several hours without eating, like he would shrink and he would just still have the skin stretched out and wrap it out. Like, it's insane. But when he was full, and this is what I'm talking about, like, it looked like he had a massive beer belly. And then when he hadn't eaten in a while, it would go back down. His cheeks on his face behaved kind of similarly, right? Like, if he hadn't eaten in a while, his cheeks would kind of start to sag, and it would look like he was way older than he was. He could even, like, his cheeks actually were so big that he could actually stretch them to fit a dozen eggs in his mouth very easily. This is all documented, historically documented. It sounds insane and impossible, but this is apparently what happened. Whenever he would eat, though, Tarrare, he would sweat profusely, which would create an unbearable body odor, which I bet, right? This is like before deodorant, and just God knows what kind of fats and gases and the oils are secreting from his pores from all the stuff that he's eating. The smell was actually so strong that many people claimed that they could visibly see the odoriferous waves emanating from his body. I don't know that that's true, but that's how smelly this guy would get. His eyes and cheeks would become bloodshot from his just massive gluttony, and the resulting diarrhea that he would always have. Because, like, yeah, you're not going to just eat stones and whole apples and snakes and not have an adventure afterwards, right? Like, also just his metabolism is so high and his body's digesting things so quickly that, like, yeah, it's not going to have time to form solids. It's just an interstate from his tongue to his butthole, just getting things out as fast as they can. The diarrhea was described as, quote, fetid beyond all conception, which just means incomparably stinky. Just no person on earth could ever compare to the bathroom adventures that this guy was having. He eventually joined the French Revolutionary Army at the start of the War of the First Coalition, which was this conflict in which, like, several European powers got really angry at France for, like, no real reason. It's just what you did. Europe was just always at war with somebody. When the military rations weren't enough to keep him full, he actually began performing stunts for other soldiers to get their rations, and also scavenging dumpsters for scraps. Still, that wasn't enough. And so when he started to suffer from exhaustion, he checked into the military hospital, where he was granted 4 times the normal amount of rations. Even then, like, that was still not enough. And so he continued to scavenge gutters and dumpsters and back alleyways for anything he could find to eat. A guy named Dr. Curville, who was fascinated by Tarrare's appetite and began conducting experiments on him, basically sat Tarrare down at a table and put out a spread that conventionally was enough for 15 people. And within just minutes, Tarrare had devoured 2 meat pies, entire plates of just grease and salt, 4 gallons of milk. And then, this is insane to me, but it's documented. Dr. Corville placed a live cat in front of Tarrare, who then just grabbed it, ripped it in half with its teeth, poor kitty, drank its blood, and then just ate the meat off its bones like it was just a plate of ribs. Corville continued to bring live animals to Tarrare, such as eels, lizards, snakes, and puppies, all of which this dude ate alive. Sad about the puppies, but just insane how this dude had to eat so much just to stay alive. Eventually, Dr. Curville figured out how to use Tarrare's skills to France's advantage. Curville met with General Alexandre de Beauharnais, French names, man, and suggested that Tarrare was perfect to be a courier, since basically he could just eat the package that needed to be delivered, cross enemy lines, crap them out, and then deliver them to their intended recipient, France, right? And that's exactly, I mean, because that's literally what he ended up doing. So Tarrare became this quasi spy / delivery person, and they would give him a letter, a package, whatever. Dude would eat it, have to swallow it whole, and then get across the enemy lines to the recipient before he had to crap himself again. And he would find a bathroom, push it out of his butthole, and then I guess, I don't know if he cleaned it off or not, but then he would deliver it, which is disgusting either way. And for his reward, every time he made a successful delivery, Tarrare was given a wheelbarrow with 30 pounds of raw beef liver and lungs, which he didn't even bother cooking. He just ate it immediately. He was quickly made a full-time spy. However, General de Beauharnais was concerned about Tarrare's mental state, and I get it. And so he gave Tarrare a dummy message to carry to a captured French colonel under the guise of this message being super vital intelligence, right? So he tells Tarrare, I've got this message, super vital, super classified. I need you to take it to this guy who's been captured. And as usual, Tarrare swallowed the box containing the note, went on his way, crossed enemy lines, disguised as a German peasant. But because he could not speak any German, he was immediately arrested by Prussian authorities and he was interrogated. They strip searched him, but obviously found nothing. And Tarrare, as he was instructed, refused to cooperate with the interrogation. But after 24 hours with no food, Tarrare got desperate, caved, and broke down and told the Prussians everything that he was doing. He was then chained to a latrine for a few hours and eventually crapped out the box that he had swallowed. When the Prussians realized that his note was actually useless, they then took him to the gallows to hang him. But the Prussians then quickly changed their minds and released him from the noose and decided to instead beat him senseless before returning him to the French. It's just like a warning to like what we'll do to your people if we catch you doing this again. Following that incident, Tarrare left the military and admitted himself to a hospital in hopes of getting some sort of medical help to normalize his appetite. A guy named Baron Percy, who had assisted Dr. Curville with Tarrare's initial hospital stay, tried laudanum, wine vinegar, soft-boiled eggs, and tobacco pills to cure the excess hunger, but literally nothing worked. Controlled diets didn't work either because Tarrare would sneak out of the hospital and literally fight stray dogs in the streets for scraps and roadkill behind butcher shops, inside gutters, and along the back alleys in France, in Paris. At one point, he was actually caught drinking patients' blood and eating dead bodies in the hospital mortuary. So that's a level of hunger that, like, I don't even think those starving kids in Africa are at yet, right? Like, when you're at the point where you're going into a morgue and drinking blood and just eating the cadavers, I think you really got a problem. When a 14-month-old child mysteriously disappeared from the hospital, Tarrare was quickly named the prime suspect. Although there was really no solid evidence to convict him, he was run out of town and he never returned. 4 years later, a bedridden Tarrare summoned Baron Percy from a hospital in Versailles. Tarrare claimed that he had eaten a golden fork 2 years earlier and that was the reason that he had gotten super sick and had been bedridden. Percy arrived and diagnosed Tarrare with advanced tuberculosis. And then a month later, Tarrare died. His official cause of death was persistent bloody diarrhea. The fork that he claimed to eat was never recovered. But yeah, man, just an insane story. All of this is what's documented in history. Now, could it have been embellished and exaggerated? Possibly, but just absolutely nuts, that story. Our next story here is of Robert Giddon Johnson, who is a farmer, a historian, a judge, and a soldier who lived in Salem, New Jersey in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. As a boy, he was visiting family when the British raided Salem during the Revolutionary War. Several people on the farm were killed, and then Robert, along with the rest of his family, were taken prisoner and held for several days. Beyond that, though, Robert went on to graduate from Princeton University in 1790, where he intended to become a lawyer, but instead he ended up focusing on horticulture and managing his family's farm. He then became president of the New Jersey Horticultural Society and is actually credited with introducing tomatoes to the area in 1820. Now, this is in southern New Jersey. So, I always think that like, even South Jersey with like Philadelphia still, I thought was a pretty big Italian population, but I don't know, man, maybe not, and who knows, maybe, in the cities, there were tomatoes that were imported, tomato sauces, but maybe tomatoes weren't actually being grown. I don't know. But this is what's crazy about this story to me. In the southern part of New Jersey, this increase in tomato crops became a valuable export for the country since the fruits were, and tomatoes a fruit technically, were able to be easily shipped to Philadelphia and New York City. But not everyone in New Jersey was on board with this seemingly new fruit, which, again, feels bafflingly ridiculous for a couple of different reasons. Because first, Robert was a well-known expert in horticulture by 1820. So, like, if there was anyone on the planet that you could trust to eat a supposedly brand new fruit or vegetable, Robert was pretty high up on that list to get the stamp of approval and say that like everything is cool. Second, like, here's the thing, like certainly tomatoes had to have been well known for years, especially among all the Italians in the area, since those people used the tomatoes for all their spaghetti and pizza sauces, right? But I don't know. And then lastly, like there are countless historical records indicating that people were eating tomatoes throughout Europe, Central America, and South America for decades, centuries leading up to 1820. So I still don't understand why the people in South New Jersey, and this is where the Pine Barrens are, and the Pine Barrens and the Pineys, long considered pretty stupid people. And so maybe this was part of it. I don't know. But no one really knows why a faction of people in southern New Jersey refused to believe that tomatoes were safe to eat. But because of this uprising and outrage, Robert became like, he made it his life's goal to shut them up and prove them wrong. So one morning, Robert walked out of his mansion carrying a basket of tomatoes and wearing a black suit with white ruffles, black shoes, black gloves, and a tricorn hat, because I guess it's just fun to look ridiculous when you're going to do a ridiculous thing. He walked down Market Street to the courthouse in downtown Salem, where, I kid you not, 2,000 people had gathered in the town square to challenge the notion that tomatoes were safe to eat. As the firemen's band played a song to lead Robert up to the steps of the courthouse, the crowd was cheering, polite applause, whatever. And so Robert began his speech by talking about the history of the tomato, which, God, had to be the most boring speech ever made. You're gonna make a speech about the history of the tomato? Look here, the lowly, simple tomato, a soft yet sturdy outer skin protects the inside, a soft, juicy, flavorful fruit that is versatile. You can put it on your pizza. You can put it on your pasta. It makes ketchup. Has ketchup even been invented yet? I don't know. It can be so many things, and yet it grows from this one tiny greenish yellow seeds. Thank you, dog, for wagging during the middle of my speech. It's very distracting. Some of you have checked out already. You're probably not even listening at this point. He then, he reached out, grabbed a ripe tomato from his basket. This is actually a quote from the speech. To help dispel the tall tales and the fantastic fables that you have been hearing, and to prove to you that it is not poisonous, I am going to eat one of these tomatoes right now. And the crowd goes silent. And Robert started playing up to this suspense. He dramatically brings the tomato forward to his mouth, bites down. There was a slight crunch as his teeth pierced the skin of the tomato. The juice squirted out from inside of the fruit. A woman literally screamed and fainted. Like, ladies, give credit where credit's due. I'm so glad women don't faint at the same rate that they used to. I don't know what was going on. I don't know. Maybe you had too many layers on. Your corsets were too tight. Not enough good blood circulation. But man, women be fainting a lot in the 1800s and 1700s. This is crazy. Then, this woman faints. The crowd's kind of getting a little more hysterical. Robert really gets into it. He's just double fisting tomatoes into his mouth, alternating bites between each one. The crowd's going insane. The fireman's band starts rocking out. And then the crowd's like, he's done it. He's still alive. I don't understand why there was so much doubt that this would actually not go well. But Robert becomes a local hero. In the 1980s, Salem, New Jersey actually began celebrating Robert Gideon Johnson Day, which then featured the reenactment of the tomato eating with actors in full costume. Just absolute buffoonery going on in New Jersey. Our next story here, a little bit shorter. Fast forwarding here to the 1970s, when people all over the country became increasingly concerned with the growing number of hippies and the increased use of hard drugs like heroin. News outlets all over the country began running warning stories about opiates and, even worse, common items that could be used as a substitute for hard drugs. Ernest A. Caraballo Jr., who was allegedly a lawyer and a pharmacist with the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, then issued a dire warning for parents, specifically in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Caraballo's argument focused on cookbooks, and he was warning parents that cookbooks were fueling a deadly epidemic all over Chattanooga, because apparently kids in Chattanooga were taking these cookbooks and finding alternatives to the heavy drugs that they really wanted and getting super high. In particular, Caraballo alleged that kids were injecting peanut butter cut with a little bit of mayonnaise directly into their veins, giving them an insane high, as if they were doing mushrooms and LSD at the same time. All right. And no one decided to try to fact check this or anything, but instead, parents all over Chattanooga immediately assumed that their kids were using their school lunches for other nefarious activities, because people can just be that truly stupid. The panic actually made it all the way to Congress, where a subcommittee hearing focused on what to do about people injecting themselves with peanut butter, or a subcommittee literally spent government time focused on what to do about these people who were injecting themselves with peanut butter. The entire situation ended up dying down a few weeks later once they were given something else to be outraged about. But it's funny to me because that's just the news cycle today. And yet this has always been happening. And so that's a good reminder for me. But yeah, people in Chattanooga, Tennessee got super outraged because they thought their kids were injecting themselves with peanut butter. And look, somebody did it, but also injecting yourself with peanut butter probably not going to make you high. It probably hurts. It probably blocks your arteries, right? I don't know. It probably kills you more than it makes you high. Anyway, our final story here takes place in 2014, when on at least 4 different occasions, a mystery man would drive up to an unsuspecting woman in Philadelphia, flash a hefty slice of Swiss cheese, and then ask the woman to wrap it around his wiener and make some sort of weird human cheesesteak with it. Somehow no one could identify this man, probably because it's hard to concentrate on what someone looks like when they're dangling a piece of cheese in front of you and then asking you, probably beneath several very heavy breaths, to do kind of a 5-finger shuffle with the cheese. One woman was actually able to take a picture on her phone and then immediately posted it to Facebook. But again, neither the police or anyone on the internet was able to identify it, and all hope kind of seemed lost in sort of like identifying this man until 21-year-old Gabby Chest came forward. And Gabby thought that the man in the picture looked a lot like a guy who had messaged her on OkCupid, which I don't know if it still is, but it was an online dating site that was pretty popular back in 2014. I would know. I was there. The message, I was not dangling Swiss cheese in front of people. The message came from a man named Chris Pagano, and he had messaged Gabby asking if he would be interested, or if she would be interested in having kind of a non-traditional sexual relationship. And so Gabby, being very curious, because that's not a question you get asked every day, asked to learn a little bit more about it. And so Chris went into detail about how women had always judged him by his looks. Now, what did Chris look like? Well, I'll tell you. Chris was a heavy set fella. He had a swollen pot belly and a face, the best I can describe it, as just constantly suffering from a shellfish allergy. All right. And he was very upset that women were constantly judging him by his looks instead of his obviously charming personality. And so because women weren't really into his distended physique, Chris decided that he had to come up with a better way to meet women. And so he made the obvious connection that women enjoyed dairy products like cheese, and then reasoned that he must replace women with cheese to fulfill his sexual urges. And so according to the message that he sent Gabby, he had actually already found several women to play a little one-handed baseball with him and a slice of Swiss cheese, which I don't know, probably says a lot about the character of the women in Philadelphia. And again, if you need a reminder about how much Philadelphia sucks, we did an episode on Philadelphia a while back. Go back and find it. It's not a great, look, Philadelphia tourism agency, not going to be using that anytime soon. Again, though, even though Chris had found several women to do this weird dance with him, those relationships didn't last long because the women realized like how insane of an arrangement this was. But Chris was still a lonely guy, and he couldn't understand why women would be so grossed out over just polishing his knob with a slice of cheese. So to try to like sweeten the deal, he offered to do something in return for Gabby, whatever she wanted, if she accepted, but made sure to make it very clear. Like Chris made it super clear that he did not think Gabby was a sex worker. Gabby, to her credit, declined all of this. But with that information, along with a 2009 arrest record in which, this is crazy, he actually got arrested in 2009 when he pulled an entire block of cheese from his pants and offered a lady $20 to rub it on him. Oh, Philly. Chris was charged with harassment, indecent exposure, and stalking again. He was eventually sentenced to 8 months of probation and sex offender counseling. By all accounts, he hasn't done it since then, or he's been a little bit more tactful in asking someone to rub him with a slice of cheese. All right, fun with food in the books. One of my favorite episodes in a long time. Just the silliness of these stories. God, like if I ever did a best of, there would be some clips of this episode in it for sure. But let's recap now and see what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Number one, Tarrare, a French revolutionary soldier, probably suffered from like a combination of like hyperthyroidism and like a damaged amygdala in his brain or whatever, but had crazy high metabolism, needed to constantly eat and eat an insane amount, just a preposterously unheard of amount of food just to stay alive. Only weighed about 100 pounds, would eat live animals, raw meat and organs, literally anything he could get his hands on just to stop from feeling hungry. And then just always constantly had diarrhea. So good for him. Number two, in the 1820s, people in New Jersey really thought that tomatoes were not good for you and didn't realize that they were probably had always been eating tomatoes, but it's fine. But Robert Gideon Johnson dramatically showed them that tomatoes were indeed totally fine. And then number three, if you're in Philadelphia, keep an eye out for Chris Pagano. Make sure he doesn't come up to you. Just, can you rub this piece of cheese on my wiener? Please, that'll make me so happy. Please, ma'am. Please take this piece of cheese. Gross. Next week on Our Weird World, it's a new month. We are in August already. Can you believe it? Anyway, it's a new Weird Fun Bag. It's going to be the 9th edition, and we are looking at 3 stories as always. We're looking at the stories of Colin Howell, Thomas Patrick, and William Morgan. What do they have in common? Nothing, but they're just some weird stories from history that I put in this episode. So thank you all for continuing to listen. Keep telling all your friends and keep it weird. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. This biggity boy's a diggity dog. I have 'em like Miley Cyrus, clothes off, twerking in their bras and thongs, timber, face down, booty up, timber. That's the way we like to what? Timber. I'm slicker than an oil spill. She says she won't, but I bet she will. Look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. Nah, it's just me. Ain't a damn thing changed. Live in hotels, swing on planes. Blessed to say, money ain't a thing. Club jumping like LeBron, now volley. Order me another round, homie. We about to climb. Why? 'Cause it's about to go down. Swing your partner round and round. End of the night, it's going down. One more shot, another round. End of the night, it's going down. It's going down. I'm yelling timber. You better move. You better dance. Let's make a night you won't remember. I'll be the one you won't forget.